Welcome to this lecture on vector spaces and a brief introduction to subspaces. So let's first try to understand what a vector space is. The common features of a vector space are there must exist a non-empty set V whose elements are called vectors. This set should also include the zero vector. There must be a way to add two vectors to give another vector. There must be a way to multiply a vector by a scalar to give a vector, and a reasonable set of rules that involve the operations of addition and scalar multiplication. To formalize this concept, let us put all the axioms in a table. Before we look at the axioms, let us understand the notation. The elements of the space V are generally denoted by U, V, W, etc. in bold, and the elements of F are generally denoted by letters like C, D, etc. Now, the 10 axioms which should be satisfied by a set to make it a vector space will appear like this. The axiom number 1 and 6 correspond to the vector addition and scalar multiplication. For two vectors U and V, U plus V must return back a vector, so that is called closure under vector addition. And if you look at 6, multiplying any vector U with a scalar must return back a vector, so C into U should again belong to the space V. The other axioms like 2, 3, 2 and 3 is commutative under addition, 3 is associativity under addition, and then existence of the identity element, additive identity element that is denoted by 0, and existence of additive inverse denoted by minus U. It's only a symbolic representation. Minus U does not mean the negative of U, but U time U plus its inverse should return back the additive identity. 7, 8 and 9 are obvious, nothing much to explain, but 10 is critical. 1 times U should return back U, where 1 should come from the field of scalars. Violation of any one of these axioms will make V not a vector space. Now, this particular paragraph that has been included should caution us not to take the vector space terminology literally, because this V can practically consist of any mathematical objects. They can be simple vectors, they can be matrices, they can be polynomials, they can be integrable functions, and so on and so forth. Similarly, vector addition may not actually mean addition in some examples. They can be other mathematical operations. Similarly, scalar multiplication can also be defined in different ways. So one should not get carried away by vector addition as simple addition and scalar multiplication as the common scalar multiplication. Examples will reveal how one must think about operating this. Now let us start with the fundamental space that is called the Rn space or the n-dimensional Euclidean space. We have to define vector addition and scalar multiplication. In this case, the addition is the usual addition and scalar multiplication is the usual scalar multiplication. To make matters simple, I have taken n is equal to 2, which means we are working with ordered pairs. Let us take U as x1, y1, v as x2, y2. That define vector addition in the normal way and scalar multiplication as usual. And the zero vector will be the ordered pair 0, 0. And you can test all the 10 axioms will be satisfied. So R2 and in general Rn will form a vector space. The second example, we move from vectors to matrices. Let us talk about 3 by 2 matrices under matrix addition and scalar multiplication. So you can take two matrices A and B of order 2 by 3 and then define A plus B as simple matrix addition and scalar multiplication as the usual scalar multiplication. And the additive identity in this case will be the null matrix O of order 2 by 3. And once again, you can check all the 10 axioms are satisfied. We now move to the third example where we talk about the space of polynomials of degree 2 or less. Such a space is generally denoted by P2. And we can define addition as addition of polynomials and scalar multiplication as multiplication of a polynomial with a scalar. So to make the definitions clear, let us take two polynomials P of x and Q of x, add them in the usual way. Polynomials, when you add, like terms must be added. And similarly, scalar multiplication, C times P of x, C will multiply all the coefficients, and the additive identity will be the zero polynomial, 0 plus 0x plus 0x squared. And with this, we can verify that all the 10 axioms are satisfied. So this is another example of a vector space. Let us now discuss a space which does not become a vector space because of an unusual scalar multiplication definition. So we talk about R2 here, the set of all ordered pairs, and then the addition is the usual vector addition, but we define a new scalar multiplication as C into U is equal to Cx and 0. That means C will multiply the x coordinate straight away, but reduces the y coordinate to 0. If this was a definition of scalar multiplication, we will see why R2 does not become a vector space. So let us directly go to axiom number 10, where we test 1 into U. 1 into U is x comma y. That is nothing but 1 into x and 0 as defined in this problem. The output is x0. This does not tally with xy. So it does not give us back u. So 1 into u is not equal to u. Therefore, one axiom has failed. Therefore, R2 under this scalar multiplication is not a vector space. Then, example number 5, we consider all 2 by 2 matrices under the usual matrix multiplication and scalar multiplication. This does not form a vector space. The reason is, here the so-called vector addition is matrix multiplication. And when we talk about matrix multiplication, two matrices A and B will not commute under multiplication generally. That means A into B is not equal to B into A generally. So that is one reason why it is not a vector space. Secondly, the inversion. In this case, because multiplication is the operation, there is no guarantee that every 2 by 2 matrix will have a inverse because one of them may be non-singular. So there are two reasons we have identified why this cannot be a vector space. 6 is an interesting example where we talk about a new set called Z5 bar consisting of the elements 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And here the vector addition is defined as addition modulo 5 and usual scalar multiplication. To explain how the addition modulo works, let us take some elements and test. 1 plus 2 is 3 and 3 is very much inside the set, so nothing to worry. But when you take 2 plus 3, it is 5, and 5 mod 5 should be calculated as 5 minus 5, 0, and 0 is inside Z5. When you take 3 plus 4, the output is 7. 7 mod 5 will be 7 minus 5, that is 2. Therefore, that is very much inside the set. So by this constrained addition technique, we can find that addition modulo 5 will make the axioms from 1 to 5 workable. Similarly, when you multiply with any scalar and use the modulo arithmetic, you will find that we will be able to verify the other properties. But the most important properties to test are the inverses of the elements of Z5. So Please remember, the additive identity for Z5 under addition modulo 5 is the element 0. And the inverses of 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be in the reverse order 4, 3, 2, 1 because 1 plus 4 is 5, 5 mod 5 is 0, 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 mod 5 is 0, and so on and so forth. Therefore, this is a very rare example of how Z5 can become a vector space under addition modulo 5. I have included a small exercise which you can easily try. In the first exercise, the set is Z6 under multiplication modulo 6. So you follow the same logic as addition modulo 6. Only thing is, you instead of adding numbers, you should multiply numbers and use the modular arithmetic. So you can find that there's a small hitch with the inverses. So please work out the inverses of 2, 3, and 4, and you will find that they don't exist. For your reference, I have included the checking of the inverse for 2, and you will find that there is no inverse for 2. So Z6 does not form a vector space under multiplication modulo 6. The second example is straightforward. The set of all integrable functions over the interval a comma b, it forms a vector space with respect to usual addition and scalar multiplication. Similarly, the third exercise, in which we are talking of all complex numbers which are generally called the C2 space. So let us take two complex numbers Z1 and Z2 as x1 plus I y1, Z2 as x2 plus I y2, and then the addition is the usual complex addition. Scalar multiplication is the usual complex scalar multiplication, and we'll find that this will definitely satisfy all the 10 axioms. Now here is a very small introduction to subspaces. Subspace of a vector space is to be understood through 3 points. Basically, W, if you call it as subset of V, then W should contain the 0 vector. That's a very, very important necessity. Number 2, for any vector U belonging to the subset W, the scalar multiple C into U should also belong to W. That means there's a closure axiom. Then for any two vectors U and V belonging to W, the sum U plus V should also belong to W. So there's a necessity for vector addition. So if these 3 axioms are satisfied, then the subset W becomes a subspace. The concept of subspace will dominate the next lecture when we talk about linear independence, linear dependence, etc. But here I have just given you 4 small exercises for your practice. And I hope you'll be able to very easily verify why in first example, W is a subspace, whereas in the other cases, it's not a vector subspace. But probably you'll struggle with 3 and 4 because I'm talking about 2 special functions, legendary polynomials and Chebyshev polynomials, which can be clarified at a later time, but one can always search good literature and find out some properties of legendary and Chebyshev polynomials. So this is about the first lecture on vector spaces and subspaces.